back to the Emergency Stream Intervention Program presented through the Upper Susquehanna Coalition. My name's Mike Lovegreen. In this section, we're going to talk about dewatering a site. And in some cases, you're able to take advantage of a situation like this, where you have an avulsion that goes off to the left and an old channel that goes off to the right. We saw that in our classroom examples, and here's a real-life situation where, again, you can take advantage of that, let the water go through that new channel and rehabilitate the old channel. We'll talk more about different approaches to dewatering sites in this next section. So I'm going to move on to dewatering, and in a lot of cases, because of water quality regulations and whatever, we need to dewater our site. Now, in a lot of cases where we have an emergency, we might not have the convenience of being able to dewatering something. We might need to be saving that that structure or impacts on infrastructure, and we need to get in and out of there really quick. But whenever we can, and again, you need to coordinate this with the regulatory folks to make sure when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate. But if we need to start to consider dewatering, there's a lot of ways to do that. So, one of the first things we need to do is isolate that work site, that site that we're going to be doing work in the channel. We want to try and dry that out as best we can to avoid any sediment disruption that will get into the mainstream and have impacts downstream, both from a habitat perspective and from just from the sediment moving down and clogging structures downstream. So, and again, water quality is a critical issue, and in some cases it's a higher issue than other places. So again, that one principle is isolate that work site as best you can from flowing water. And in a lot of cases, if you have a point bar or if you have an area where you can actually route the stream around your work area and put up some temporary blocks, channel blocks, so that you can get into this work area, do your work, restore that channel capacity and dimensions according to the tables or your reference reach, get that work done, and then put that clean water back into your work area as quick as possible is what you want to do. And sometimes that involves pumping, and so you can pump that dirty water out from your work site into a sediment basin or a filter area, and we'll show some examples here of what that looks like. So here's that avulsion that Jeff showed in a prior example, and here's where the avulsion cut through that threatened this barn and the road eventually. So again, there was some real concern here. What happened here is there was a big debris blockage that diverted that flow, and that's what caused the avulsion. So that's kind of a convenient situation or scenario to work with, because we can let the water continue to flow through that avulsion, block off the original channel where we had the problems, restore that channel to where it should be, and then put the water back into the original channel and then fill in that avulsion. So again, pretty straightforward. And here's, that's exactly what they did. They blocked that off. They worked on the original channel to put that capacity back, to put those dimensions back that were stable, and continued to let that clean water flow through that new avulsion without disturbing it. Another method is that if you have a nice big point bar and your area of concern is right along here, again, blocking that flow off, opening up a channel through that point bar so that you can access this work area without a lot of disturbance of the water. That's a good strategy. Again, diversions, if you're going to divert that water around your work site, place those barriers as close to the work area as possible. So you can again isolate that area, but not disturb more area than you need to. but you want to leave enough room for the operations. So, again, plan that. You may need to stage your barrier so that that you're not moving a barrier too many times, especially for long reaches of stream. And make sure you're tying those barriers into the end of the bank, so that if there is a storm and the water comes up a little bit, it's not going to flank those barriers. It's not going to erode them and cause more problems where you might cause your own construction avulsion in a way. Here's some example of some of those barriers. Again, they're not perfect. As you can see, you still have flow below that barrier, but again, they're using concrete blocks tied into the bank, and they're lining it with plastic upstream to help restrict some of that water. But again, you're in most of the regions, you're working in a gravel bed type stream, so water will flow underneath those blocks. So that's where you might need some pumping. You might need some work site control of that water also. And again, here's another example of that site that's got utilizing those concrete blocks, and it's wrapped in plastic. For smaller streams, sometimes you can pump around the site, again putting a block wall up lined in plastics, intercepting that flow of water, pumping that water around your work site, and then back into the stream if it's staying clean. If not, you might have to put it into a sediment basin. And one of the key things here is that you really need a pump big enough to handle the water, and you need to have backup pumps in case of your pump fails or whatever. But again, good planning is what you really need to consider when you're starting to utilize pumps. There's calculations that you can figure on how big a stream, what type of flows you have, and actually what pump size you need. Again, pumping is good for short-term projects where you're not going to run into a storm, you're not going to run into increased flows or anything like that. But again, do some planning with that. A little bit more calculating to do if you're going to have to utilize a pump. And there are charts, and we have these in workbooks, and a lot of folks that provide those pumps through rentals or whatever have charts like this. You can go to USGS stream stats to find out what flows you can expect for that stream, so it gives you some indication. But it's always good to oversize that pump for increased flows rather than undersize them. And again, pumping that around a site, for the outlet of that water, you want to put it into a vegetated area or an area that's going to filter that water, because even pumping is going to stir up a lot of that sediment. And you also don't want to blast it out the end of a pipe. You want to dissipate that energy coming out of the pump, and you want to make sure that the device is always working. As I mentioned, you have to have a contingency plan for what would happen again if you had a pump failure, and you want clean water to go back into that stream. You don't want concentrated flow that's going to cause some erosion before it gets back into the stream. And there's all kinds of pump outlet protections. You can have the outlet on some loose rock. That rock will break up the energy and dissipate that flow, and that's that's a strategy to do. And here's an example of that outlet is flowing into a pile of rock before it flows back into the stream, to help break up that energy, so you don't have that concentrated flow just ripping and tearing at the banks. Here's a creative way of addressing it, that you have some perforated drain pipe, and they're flowing the pump outlet into that perforated pipe, and it's breaking up the flow, and really no problem. It's in a nice vegetated area on the bank, so that water's flowing back into the stream and recharging that stream while they're doing their work. Again, over and over, no turbid water should be leaving that site when you're worried about water quality. don't cause erosion, and make sure everything's operating. And if you do have problems, you got to shut down until you get that repaired and the work back to where you want it. So let's talk a little bit about project sites. And Jeff, do you have any comments on again, pumping around or dewatering?
Well, no, I think it's one of those things that, depending on the region that you're located in and the resource concerns that you have in that region, are going to determine the amount of pumping or the amount of diversion that you're going to have to do. I know I was just out on a site here where we're going to be doing some habitat work maybe this summer, and it's on a large stream system, river system, and very difficult to dewater it. Plus, the actual resource, the concern that's there, is a endangered or threatened mussel. So they don't want me to dewater the site. So they want the water there. They don't want a dry site while we're doing the work. So we made some changes in how we were going to do it so that we did not put a lot of turbidity into the stream channel. So there's different considerations for every site, for sure, but dewatering does help with construction, for sure. There's no need to be pushing gobs of point bars or avulsions through flowing water, because that's just not the right way to do it. So.
Yep, you're right. Every site's different, and depending on whether you have a municipal water supply downstream or threatened and endangered species, or a high value trout stream or anything like that. I mean, again, conditions are conditions. Good rule of thumb is those: get in and get out as quick as you can.
Yep.
Especially in an emergency situation. Okay, so now let's wrap this kind of up as far as giving you some examples of how this whole methodology or this protocol was applied to a lot of different project sites. And just to mention, the project sites that you're going to see might not have been high priority sites as far as an emergency situation, but they were good demonstration sites of this whole methodology and how to approach a project, and how to again restore that channel to that functional cross section and dimensions that we need for again proper function. So again, some project sites. So here's the Westbrook site, and I believe you saw this in the previous slide. But we had a channel come through, and we had multiple avulsions come through because of gravel depositions and some other different issues that went on here. And so here's the before site. So again, you can see this braiding that's going on down here. A lot of depositions, center bars, avulsions all through here. And again, from a farmer's perspective, that's not real healthy, because you're losing a lot of that field because of this disruption. So again, here we are down on the ground, and you can see this large center bar that's through here. Again, it's braiding that channel, so energy is starting to dissipate. You've split the energy into multiple channels, so it's no longer able to carry that gravel and that sediment and that bed load, and so it's depositing it out. It's going to just rip and tear until it gets back to some normal function, and that whole farmer's field is just disrupted because of this. And again, some more examples of what's going on, that braiding and avulsions through different areas of that field. So again, here's an example of going back to that app, that stream stats, that New York stream stats that Jeff talked about. By going to stream stats and going to their project section, you can see here we dropped a dot down right where the project was. And by doing that, you can then click on delineation, and the application will automatically delineate that whole watershed area. And when you plug that in and hit report, it'll start giving you all kinds of information about that basin. So it'll give you, you know, the area that drains to a point on the stream in square miles, so that we know now we have a 12.6 mile drainage area. So we can go right to our tables and start to figure out, okay, what should that dimension look like? It gives us slope, it gives us all kinds of information, and we could spend probably a half hour talking about all the different functions that you get in stream stats. It's a great tool to utilize, and most of us that work in streams are able to do that. But that quick click by putting that dot down gives you that drainage area automatically. And I know Jeff, you know, Jeff and I can harken back to the days when we took out the topo map and we drew in pencil that area that we thought was included in that drainage area, and we put this little mylar dot grid down on top of that and counted the dots, and that gave us how many acres was in that drainage area. And boy, if you missed your place, you'd have to go back and do it again and again. But this is so also as part of stream stats, which is kind of an innovation to stream stats, is that they included that bankful stream flow statistics. And those statistics included bankful area, bankful depth, bankful flow in cubic feet per second, and a bankful width, which where those tables that we showed you earlier were derived from. So now you have all that information right there, all these statistics to start to construct that new stream channel. Here's that sketch. So again, you're out on site. You need a sketch to show the regulatory folks on what you're going to do there. Also to have a work plan so that you can give that information to your operators that are sitting on the bulldozer, and you can start to lay that project out. But here's where that stream came down from the road. You've got, you know, all these different channels that are cutting through here. And so what their plan was, they show on this sketch that you put a block in here for that new channel that came through, and have the water go down through the original channel, and then stockpile areas where you're going to put any material that you're going to take out of the channel, and to fill in those avulsions. So again, pretty straightforward. You want to explain what you're going to do so that you've got, you know, again, that information right in front of you, and have a concise work plan. Again, they opened that up once they put this new channel in, and in this example, the new channel was the one that actually functioned better than the old original channel that wasn't functioning, that started to fill in with gravel, and this avulsion worked through. So once they had that cleared out, they filled in that original channel, and again, they were good to go. From the tables or from the stream stats information, they were able, again, put this sketch together of how wide that channel should be, how deep it should be, our 3-to-1 slopes. Again, all that information that you need to give to the equipment operators so they can start their work. And here's in the field. Here's where they blocked off that evolved channel, and they put some blocks in here, and they covered it in plastic, and then put some fill in here to again assure that water doesn't go into the channel that they wanted to work in. They actually had that channel recreated, and now they're grading off that floodplain. Again, that work that was done in the channel is completed. They're moving that material so that, again, they've got a nice flat floodplain for that water to engage. And here's that final product. So again, pretty straightforward. Once you get your dimensions, you just go to work. You got your sinuosity pattern that you wanted in there. You've got your slopes about where you want, and you can see the stream over time has actually started to readjust. It started to place point bars here and there where it needs to place them. And so, you know, as long as it has a floodplain to engage and it can adjust itself, that stream is going to do that. And what you've done by this process is to kind of, you know, fast forward that process. So Instead of taking 10,000 years of geologic time to create that stream, you're actually giving it a jump start. And then again, here's that stream on the ground, so you can see that channel is centralized into one single channel. It's moving material. It's engaged with its floodplain. It's got a well vegetated floodplain, and now that field is a whole lot more usable for that farmer. So some good examples, even some great habitat. You're seeing some pools develop, some nice riffles, some overhanging vegetation to provide cover for trout or whatever you might find in that stream. Here you've seen this example before. This is the Platte Kill, and we've talked about this, but here was the original route of that stream along the base of that hillside. There was a blockage right here at the mouth of that, and the avulsion broke through here and threatened this barn as well as the road over here. So here's what's happened. Here's where the original channel went through. You can see there's some woody debris and some blockage there from excess sediment. And again, going into the avulsion over to the right of our picture here. Here's where that avulsion came through and threatened the foundation of this barn. So again, if we get exceedingly high water again that starts to flow out, we may have some structural losses there and some serious structural damage that we can't recover from. So again, that does place this at a very high priority. Again, going to stream stats, we placed our dot down where that occurrence happened. It automatically gives us our basin delineation. So again, we know how big our basin is. We go to the statistics. We find out, what our drainage area is, and here we have a 34 square mile drainage area, and here's our bankful dimensions. Now, one of the things it gives here, it gives 3 different bankful sets of statistics, and that's because those regions aren't exact. We're very close, and that drainage area fell into a number of different regions, and that's where having that reference reach is really useful, because you can go to that reference reach and say, okay, there's a big difference here where we have a bankful depth or a bankful width of 62 feet here, 62 feet here, 65 feet. So it's roughly not too bad. But again, our wetted perimeter or our bankful area, a little bit different. But again, you're trying to get as close as what's feasible. So here we are. Here's our site sketch. And that site sketch, again, lays out the plan on how we're gonna attack this site. Here you can see the avulsion it went through that threatens the barn here, and here's that original channel. So again, looking at that site sketch, here's our access road for construction. So we've laid that out so we can direct the equipment into certain areas. We're putting a temporary channel block right where that avulsion started, so that we can work on that original channel, rehabilitate it, get it back to where that cross section and those dimensions need to be. We have the end blocked off of our work site, and again, we're pumping that water, that dirty water from our construction site into this well vegetated area. So and we have our stockpile areas. So again, we're all set. We've presented this to the folks that will give us that emergency permit, and we can proceed to work as quick as we get that. This is the second stage of that construction. So once we've got this original channel rehabilitated, we block off that avulsion and fill it in. Here's our construction dimensions that we want to make sure that original channel it reflects those dimensions, and we got that from stream stats or our tables if we didn't have stream stats. And here's the actual work. So here's that original channel. Here's our stockpile. Here's the avulsion that's moving through. So here's the area that we need to actually go in and get that cross section back and remove all the debris that was in here. We've done that. We've rehabilitated that channel. We've now blocked off the avulsion. We're taking that material that we took out, that excess material. Note here that they actually put some woody material in that avulsion, and that's similar to what we showed in one of the examples that we had previously in this presentation. But we lined that woody material up, and it's created some stability until that starts to vegetate in again. Put those long stems in there, put some rocks on top, and then buried them. And here we are, the after. So again, back to the original channel. This whole area is filled in. You can see some of that rock reinforced. So again, until this vegetation starts to come in really vigorously, you need to reinforce that, because again, it's disturbed area, and that disturbed area is likely to be more erodible than it was beforehand. And here's the actual site. You can see some of that woody material. It's providing some armoring of that channel, but again, that avulsion had gone through there. It's now blocked off, and the original channel is open for business. Here it is during a high flow. Again, you can see some of that woody material coming out, but again, it's holding up, and it's doing its job. So again, with the exception of some equipment time, we're able to go in there and get that stream functional again. Here's Launt Hollow again before. You can see this. It doesn't look too bad from the aerial, but again, when we look at the close-up, we can see that it was coming out through the field and starting to cut up the field a little bit. This channel was filling up with gravel and material, and here you can see where it's actually started to evolve out into the field. And so what we want to do is get that function of sediment and water transport going again in a main channel, and not ripping through the field and again cutting channels through that field. So that was the goal of this project. Again, hopefully this will become repetitious. You go to stream stats, or if you don't have stream stats, locate yourself on one of those color-coded maps. But we have the site. We've located a site. We've clicked on delineate. Stream stats gave us that basin information. We have the drainage area, of about 4 square miles here. We've got all this information down here that gives us that bank full width and depth and area. And so we can actually start to put together some kind of construction sketches. Here's our dimensions that we pulled from stream stats or from those tables. Again, gives us everything that we need to know so that we can go out there and start grading. This was a situation where in the summertime, there was no flow through that channel, which made it great. You could get in there and put those dimensions back in and reestablish that channel without having to worry about dewatering or diverting water anywhere. So again, pretty straightforward. We're trying to, again, the purpose is to get that function of sediment transport as well as water transport through this reaches stream, so that again it doesn't threaten the farmers' fields. Here we are. We've got those dimensions reinstalled. It looks like they put some mulch on here to get some vegetation going, and again here's that after shot. So again, we've reestablished that transport. That stream has started to deposit materials to create point bars to narrow it up where the stream needs to be narrowed up to increase the velocity to move that material through. And again, we've now got a stable reach, and here it is after. So we've got some vegetation coming in here. We've got that channel cross section and depth reestablished, and we're ready to go. And here they are out actually measuring as a demonstration to folks as part of a class, showing how that's been reestablished. And here we are. We've got high flows it's actually starting to engage that floodplain that was planned and dissipating that energy. And so again, we have a functional channel. Okay, anything to add to that, Jeff? Or I think we turn it over to you now.
No, I think you hit all the qualifying high points for sure.
Okay, and it's really, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You know, hopefully we're giving you some design criteria where you don't have to go out and hire an engineer, and of course, because it's an emergency, you know you don't have time a lot of times to be able to and it sure beats going out there and just hogging out the stream. And sometimes, as we mentioned early in the presentation, you inadvertently sometimes destabilize the stream as opposed to bringing it back to where it's functional.
Well, it's that whole theory of floodplain or bank full depth and floodplain access.
Mm-hmm.
If you get too deep, you can't get that stream to access its floodplain. When you hit the bank full elevation of that stream, wherever that stream is, and then you're going to start to create problems. So that the whole process weighs heavily on that proper depth and bank full depth and bank full width and the floodplain width. So,
oh, go ahead.
The other thing I noticed is that on that one avulsion there where the stream diverted over towards the barn, you notice they only had to work about 500 feet in that channel in order to fix it. So it's not like the old days where they'd start out one end of the property and bulldoze all their way up to the other end of the property to try to fix the issue. Generally speaking, a lot of that channel was in still very good shape. It met the criteria, and all they had to do was that one small area where the avulsion actually was created. So it'll limit some of the amount of work that you actually have to do too. So
that's a real good point, Jeff. I know the older I get and the more projects I see, you know, the lighter the touch, the better. You know, less intrusive, the better. Nature will heal itself. And you know, one of the nice things about these tools is now that you have an idea of what that channel should look like, you know, you're at least in the same kind of ballpark area, you can evaluate a channel like, you know, and again, after a storm, and I think we made this point earlier, boy, that reach of stream might look pretty raw. You know, you have raw banks and the vegetation has been removed and
trees everywhere,
gravel is redistributed and all that. But boy, you go out there and you stretch the tape and you get the dimensions and you go, boy, this is just about right on. So, you know, you don't need to put the bulldozer in there just to make it look pretty. And you know, which disturbs a lot of habitat that imbrication is disturbed and you know, so like I said, sometimes and with the best of intentions, we have, you know, some negative consequences.
Well, historically, over the years, everybody's been so attuned to not making a stream look like a stream, but making it look like a drainage ditch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this whole program changes that philosophy for sure.
I know I've shared a number of times where, you know, I talk to folks whose job it is to, you know, protect their communities, and you know, they kind of look at the stream as kind of a negative maintenance liability rather than a resource. And boy, if we can, you know, cut the maintenance needs down, if we can, you know, again, get those channels functional, maybe it'll be a resource again that people will value.